On this Monday night, BC braces for round 2. Warnings of another atmospheric river as farmers tally up their losses.
The mental part is far more stressful than the financial part.
And the military assesses the devastation from the air. A battle sprouts over spuds.
There is nothing wrong with our potatoes.
The ban on Prince Edward Island's potato exports to the U.S. and the threat to livelihoods. A holiday parade turns to horror when an SUV mows into the crowd. What police say the driver was escaping. And under consideration of Canada's top soldier, updating the mission to award a veteran with the country's highest military honor.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. 1 week after extreme weather led to a state of emergency in BC, a massive amount of repair work still has to be done. Thousands of people's lives are disrupted and more rain is coming. There are weather warnings on BC's north coast. As much as 90 millimeters of rain is expected there, with winds gusting up to 90 kilometers an hour. And in southern BC, more rain is forecast too, though not the record amounts of last week. And there's a new problem: snow. The Fraser Valley and Fraser Canyon are forecast to get 30 centimeters of snow, including along the heavily damaged Coquihalla Highway between Hope and Merritt. That key supply route has been closed for a week now. The snow will make it even harder for crews working to assess and repair it. Parts of the Trans-Canada Highway also remain underwater. Non-essential travel is still discouraged and gas rationing is still in effect. The long-term forecast is for more atmospheric rivers, what used to be called moist air bands, to wash over BC's south coast. With the ground already so saturated, people are bracing for more flooding. Our coverage tonight begins with Robin Gill in Abbotsford, where the owners of waterlogged farms have only begun counting their losses. Robin?
Donna, there are still pools and pools of water in the field that have been difficult to drain, and while the farmers in this region are bracing for another round of rain, they say it doesn't compare to the damage done in 24 hours a week ago.
And by 8 o'clock that night, the water had risen probably 8 feet.
That was a week ago when water came rushing over the farm that's been the family business for 4 generations.
I went to bed with the water rising and the cows standing up to their bellies in water. And there was nothing I could do. And as a farmer, that's a really hopeless feeling.
All 85 cows survived.
You little girl.
The calves now back in their pen.
This is where the cows belong. They don't belong in my office.
Yet in the moment of disaster, they were put in an office for safekeeping. But the family farm's 30,000 chickens didn't make it.
The mental part is far more stressful than the financial part. But you know what, we'll move on.
This part of Abbotsford, the Sumas Prairie, is located on a floodplain, so there's no insurance. It'll be up to the government to provide aid.
It is going to take a significant rebuilding effort, and we know that government is going to be a significant part of the rebuilding that takes place.
Then there's the worry over more rain in the forecast this week from BC's notorious atmospheric river systems. Just like it sounds, that's literally a flow of water en route in the sky.
There would be some snow melt with this moisture. We're talking about 40 to 70 millimeters in the Fraser Valley.
The Dykshoorn family doesn't think it'll be anything like they witnessed a week ago, so they're in cleanup mode. Have you had any sleep?
Some.
There's no rest anytime soon with this disaster still very fluid and so much more work to do. And then there are those highways that were damaged by the landslides. The province says there's no way that they'll be fixed in time for the holiday season, but they are looking at a temporary fix. Donna?
Okay, Robin Gill in Abbotsford, BC, thanks. The Trans Mountain Pipeline, which supplies most of the fuel to BC's south coast, has also been shut down for a week. Teams have been airlifted into or hiked into areas where there is still no road access. Trans Mountain said today it's using helicopters and heavy equipment to clear roads, install temporary bridges and divert water. It says there are multiple areas between Hope and Merritt where the exposed pipeline needs to be covered and other sections that may need to be replaced entirely. Spill response equipment has been deployed along the route, though the company says there's no indication of any spills. It's optimistic the pipeline can be restarted in some capacity by the end of the week. In the meantime, people in southwestern BC are being asked to ration gas and stay home if possible. The military is in the region to help with the recovery. Our Mike Armstrong joined them today for a bird's eye view of the daunting task ahead.
The scale of this disaster feels different from the air. On the ground, the idea that the Sumas plain can be drained is almost hard to believe. When you look out, it doesn't end. From above, when you can see the edges, it seems possible. That said, it is still a massive area. From the air, you can see progress. The main dike breach now sealed. Work continues to make it stronger. Further north from the floodplain, the challenges change. There are roads that have to be repaired and others that have literally disappeared. In the Chilliwack area, crews are busy. There's also considerable activity around Hope. But not far from there, a different situation.
While there is a lot of work being done on roads further south, once you get up north to the Coquihalla, an important thoroughfare, there are long stretches where the highway is closed with multiple landslides and no one's even touched them.
Now, the Air Force is still ramping up its contribution. It's moved in or is moving in 12 aircraft, different vehicles with different abilities. The main tasks are the transport of personnel and equipment, as well as reconnaissance, something that takes people in the air and on the ground.
Yeah, it has to come with the crews and technicians to fix them, of course, and a small debt of headquarters. So right now the footprint is about 75 people here on the ground to support the aircraft here in Abbotsford.
There are spots that are still only accessible by air. Helicopter traffic has been heavy for days. Their contribution, in particular civilian aircraft, has been vital. Now, there is one other thing you feel flying over the affected areas. By traveling from landslide to flood to washout, one after another, you realize how many places are affected and how big a challenge fixing them all is going to be. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Abbotsford, BC.
Canada's smallest province has a big problem. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency has suspended shipments of all fresh potatoes from Prince Edward Island to the United States, a move that could cost hundreds of millions of dollars. A fungus known as potato wart was found on 2 fields in the province. It poses no threat to human health, but it can reduce yields and take years to leave the soil. Ross Lord reports.
Potatoes are the lifeblood of Prince Edward Island, and the vast majority of them, almost $500 million worth per year, are shipped to the United States. So a sudden ban on PEI potatoes in the U.S. is a shock to the island's livid premier.
This is devastating news. And I think what's most devastating for farmers across Prince Edward Island, family farmers, is that this is being inflicted upon them through nothing that they have done.
The ban stems from the discovery of this fungus called potato wart in 2 PEI fields, whose spuds were never meant to leave the island. Potato wart can leave potatoes disfigured, but it's not considered a threat to human health. The most shocking part to islanders is that their potatoes are being outlawed not by American officials, but by the Canadian government.
With this order, we are taking a responsible approach that is based in science. It will provide the protection our industry needs through this difficult time.
Minister Bibeau calls it a temporary suspension to prevent more damaging long-term measures from U.S. officials. Premier King says the government is overreacting.
A knee-jerk and wrong-headed decision by the federal government.
Others agree.
You target the specific farms that are having some issues, specifically, not the entire island.
Premier King says PEI potatoes are under attack.
The best doggone potatoes in the world isn't just a lyric in a song, it's the foundation and bedrock of our industry here in Prince Edward Island.
Officials on the island say they'll pursue compensation to offset the impact of their top crop being blindsided. Ross Lord, Global News.
Now to the crucial next phase of Canada's vaccination campaign. Doses of Pfizer's vaccine for children are now being rolled out to the provinces. Vaccinations are expected to begin in a matter of days. In Manitoba, the online booking system opened this morning for children aged 5 to 11. In Ontario, vaccine appointment bookings are expected to open tomorrow at 8 a.m.
We should be able to start getting shots into little arms by about Thursday this week, so it's very good news.
Saskatchewan also plans to open its online booking system tomorrow morning. The province says it expects children's doses to arrive at clinics in the next 2 days. Vaccinations will get underway there on Wednesday. MPs are back to work on Parliament Hill for the first time in 5 months. The 44th session of Parliament got underway with a mandatory vaccination policy in effect. The government has a lot on its agenda and little time to tackle it all before the Christmas break. David Aiken joins me from Ottawa. David, what's on the government's urgent to-do list?
Well, Donna, the government House leader, his name is Mark Holland, he said he hopes there will be enough cooperation among all parties in this minority parliament to get 4 bills through by Christmas.
It's my intention with all parties to operate in a way that is logical and preeminently reasonable so that we can find common ground. But I also want to be clear that we're here to get results.
The Trudeau government has 4 priorities: passing legislation to extend financial supports for those still impacted by COVID-19, protecting healthcare workers and facilities from harassment and threats, providing 10 days of paid sick leave for workers in federally regulated sectors only, and banning so-called conversion therapy. It's an ambitious list, considering there are just 20 sitting days until the House rises for the Christmas break.
I am not looking to tolerate a lot of obfuscation or political games. And the good news is that's the spirit I've heard from all of the parties.
The NDP, at least, think the Liberals' 4 priorities are a good place to start.
There are some priorities in there that are things that New Democrats have pushed for and that we believe in absolutely, and we'll absolutely work quickly to pass. And there's things that we're worried are going to include measures that hurt people. And if they're going to hurt people, we're not going to support those bills.
Order! First order of business, though, electing a speaker. 7 MPs wanted the job, but the incumbent, Anthony Rota, a 6-term Liberal from Northern Ontario, prevailed.
After all this time, I am still in awe of this place.
Now, Monday was about 4 priorities for the next 4 weeks. Tuesday will be about many priorities for the next 4 years. That, of course, is the speech from the throne in which the government will lay out a broader vision on everything from a comprehensive mental health strategy to fixing the housing crisis and, of course, dealing with the effects of climate change. Donna?
Okay, David Aiken in Ottawa, thanks. And Global News will have live coverage of the throne speech at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it live on the Global TV app, as well as on Amazon Prime, Roku, and YouTube, or on our website, globalnews.ca. The Christmas parade that turned into a crime scene. Coming up, the suspect accused of driving into a crowd. In Wisconsin, a 39-year-old man has been charged with 5 counts of murder, accused of driving his SUV straight into a Christmas parade on Sunday evening. 5 people are dead, 6 children are in critical condition, and dozens of others are injured. Police are not calling it a terrorist act, but they believe it was intentional. We're not going to show you the moment of impact, but a warning: this story does contain disturbing images. Jackson Prosco reports.
The SUV flew past spectators on the parade route, and then the screams began. A driver careened through the crowd at the Waukesha Holiday Parade, plowing into bodies without stopping, smashing through barricades as he fled.
I saw people right away run to the people that were hit and start doing CPR, and I saw people on the ground, there's blood. It was really bad.
Mom! Mom! Jaden and Jody Singsamy recorded the moments as they rushed to help the victims, treating some inside a store.
It happened so suddenly and so quick, and the truck came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you just hear the sound of people getting hit.
Among the dead are members of the Milwaukee Dancing Grannies. They were performing in the parade. 18 of the injured were children, including 3 sets of siblings. Several are in critical condition.
Injuries ranged from facial abrasions to broken bones to serious head injuries. 6 of these patients were sent to the operating room last night, and 2 additional patients are undergoing surgeries today.
Police are not calling this an act of terrorism. They believe the 39-year-old suspect, identified as Daryl Brooks, was fleeing from a fight, but can't explain why he didn't stop.
We have information that the suspect, prior to the incident, was involved in a domestic disturbance, which was just minutes prior, and the suspect left that scene just prior to our arrival to domestic disturbance.
Brooks was arrested shortly after and faces at least 5 counts of intentional homicide. As the investigation continues, this town is left to clean up and grieve. The tragedy happened just days before the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday. So many families who were preparing to gather and celebrate are instead left to deal with unthinkable loss. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Ahead, buyer beware, the historic supply chain crunch affecting your grocery cart. A significant hearing is underway at the CRTC over a planned merger that could alter Canada's telecom industry. The 5-day Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission hearing is focused on the bid by Rogers Communications to take over Shaw Communications. The companies announced the $26 billion deal last March. Today, Edward Rogers, who has been at the center of a family battle for control of Rogers, made his case for the merger.
We believe passionately that a combination of Rogers and Shaw will help contribute to a stronger facility-based future for Canadians.
This is the first step in the approvals process. The Rogers takeover of Shaw must get approval from the CRTC, the Competition Bureau of Canada, and the Federal Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development. A major supply chain crunch is affecting almost every industry these days, driven by the pandemic and by the catastrophic weather events in BC that cut off or damaged supply lines. Companies really feeling the pinch are grocery stores. Anne Gaviola reports on the impact on Canadian food producers and your household budget.
The supply chain crunch is forcing big changes at Canada's largest distribution hub for fruits and vegetables.
We're flying product in more than we would have in the past. Obviously, it's more expensive, but we're also starting to bring product in a little bit earlier in some cases than we maybe would have.
To understand what's happening, here's an example of a shipment of blueberries coming to Canada from Peru. Pre-pandemic, the journey would take 10 to 12 days, but labor strikes in Peru and short-staffed ports can add 5 days. With West Coast ports jammed, many ships are diverting east, and those blueberries are getting stuck in a traffic backlog, adding another 5 days. U.S. labor shortages and COVID protocols are causing inspection delays and goods left sitting in shipping containers. That's another 2 to 3 days. And finally, the shortage of truck drivers can bring that journey to 25 days. But the shelf life of a fresh, refrigerated blueberry is just a week or two. So produce likely won't last as long by the time it reaches you.
Climate change is a supply chain issue.
This food economist says the increased frequency and severity of extreme weather events are having profound impacts on supply. Now in BC, panic buying that left shelves empty is temporary, but the disruption to dozens of farms will have a longer-lasting ripple effect. Drought conditions in the U.S. Southwest will also increase prices on items we have to import this winter, like strawberries, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts. And record-breaking summer temperatures are now translating into a spike between 5 and 25% in beef prices this coming year. With the cost of feeding, caring for, and shipping cattle rising, expect to pay even more for food, though widespread shortages aren't likely.
I don't think that we are in any great danger of seeing empty shelves in Canada. We have this large and complex and integrated food supply chain.
Solomon Zhu runs a small Toronto grocery shop. He says the impact behind the scenes favors his larger rivals.
When supply is very low, they tend to give the produce to higher stores like the chain stores instead of the small businesses. So then we have less stuff to sell.
It's an added toll on household budgets that can't afford to stretch. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Next, making the case to award the highest military honor to a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. Canada's highest military honor is the Victoria Cross, and it has not been awarded since the Second World War. There's a big push to change that and grant Private Jess La Rochelle an honor many veterans think is long overdue. He stood his ground against the Taliban in the face of impossible odds. As Mike Drolet reports, the campaign to award him the Victoria Cross has now caught the eye of Canada's top soldier.
Private Jess La Rochelle never really stood out amongst the men of 33 Bravo. He was quiet and unassuming, a good soldier, but heroic? It might not have been known when this picture was taken, but it certainly is now.
If you compare Jess La Rochelle's valorous actions on the 14th of October, 2006, they measure up with anybody's who has been awarded the Victoria Cross.
It was 2 p.m. when the call came in. Contact imminent. La Rochelle, who was manning an observation post by himself, was knocked unconscious by an RPG. His back was broken, his retina detached, and eardrum blown. And when he came to, he alone stood between roughly 30 Taliban and what was left of his battalion. Using M72 rockets, he drove the Taliban back. It wasn't until after he'd helped carry his friend's caskets at the next day's ramp ceremony that he got checked out at the hospital. La Rochelle was awarded the Star of Military Valor. Yet now, 15 years later, a group of veterans and historians have launched a petition to right a wrong and see the Victoria Cross pinned to his chest.
I think the problem is, because we haven't given one out since World War II, we have set the bar so high that basically it's like not allowing anybody into the Hockey Hall of Fame unless you're better than Wayne Gretzky.
To reopen the Victoria Cross conversation, Canada's Awards and Honours Committee needs direction from a senior government official. And it may now have it. A spokesperson for General Wayne Eyre says the Chief of Defence Staff is consulting with Commonwealth allies and reviewing information specific to the request to reopen the file of Private La Rochelle.
Wayne is going to look for the best possible, the right solution out of this, and he wants to consider everything that's happened. I know, and I support him in doing exactly that.
Whether it's humility or the lingering PTSD, La Rochelle is reticent to relive the chaos of that day, and it still takes everything he's got to manage the physical impacts of his injuries. He fought and saved lives. It's only right that others now fight for him. Mike Drolite, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Here in Canada is waves crashing into the rocks at Torbay, Newfoundland and Labrador. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Robin Gill will be here at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I will see you again on Thursday. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.